Hi, and welcome to Ward 13. Just before we were going on air, my Veterans Administration glasses, the only glasses in the world that have the screw on the bottom. This is perfect for like the federal government. Although, I am a Democrat and a FDR person. They popped out, so if I wear them, I only have one vision. But we're in Manchester. Could we say that in the kingdom of the almost blind,
Yeah.
one-lensed men are kings?
I
My
love
guest today is Jim O'Connell.
Hey, John, how are you? Welcome back to the land of the living, one-eyed or not.
Yes, the land of politics. I was away in New Mexico for a while, and it's nice not to follow local politics.
Right.
A lot of people know that Bill Cashin was one of my closest friends, and I really can't talk about his passing right now because I'm still in mourning.
Yeah.
But
He's a great man, and as I said, he welcomed me into the body politic in Manchester, encouraged me to run, supported me, and advised me. And as you know, John, I went over and sat at his kitchen table a few times, and he was so he even after all his years of service. As an active, as an alderman, he was still interested in promoting the city good insofar as he could from his kitchen table. So God bless him.
that's right. He saw you as a potential mayor, but
Oh,
only
wow.
after Joyce Craig.
Don't tell anybody that. So
I'm there in New
I don't want those
Mexico.
rumors going out.
He sounded fine. He called me just a couple of days. I was having when you're up on a mountain, 8,000 feet, with an iPhone 6, which has been orphaned by Apple, you don't have the best telecommunications. But he said, "Oh, you've got to be here for the election, at least through the primary in September. You have to come back."
Right.
And I said, "Well, I'll be back May 1st." And I expected to see him, but
Oh, there we go.
I came back early. But he really. The thing about Bill is he sat in there watching TV. You'd walk in every night. I was watching there was things that we couldn't miss. It was Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, and I used to
right.
watch him with his wife too, who was a wonderful person, Esther, who passed. But then politics. You'd walk in and he'd be watching like the obscure committee, the meeting, with those eyes he had, which were what did Rich Gerard called him the Raven? The eyes that
Oh,
would
right,
fix
yeah,
on you,
yeah.
and because didn't talk much. When they put on what is it, Channel 97 or 5? They have old meetings.
Channel 97, yeah.
Right. And I said, Bill, I don't want to watch these old meetings. We'd be watching these meetings, and there would be Donna Soucy as an alderman,
Yeah.
and, as eloquent and intelligent as she is as a senator. And then there would be Ray Buckley, who was an alderman too. But we'd be watching, and I say, Bill, you never say anything in the meeting. And they were very brief then, even though they brought in a portable camera, and it would just happen. He always said when they got in the cameras overhead, it changed the meetings.
Yeah.
It draw them out. Then you have Lavasser, acting and that.
Well, I like to.
We watched everything. But I'll just say, so we watched one meeting. It was over an hour. I said, Billy, you said like one word. He says, well, the next meeting I'll say something. And he said 2 words in that
Right.
meeting. But
Well, a lot of what happens at the automatic meetings, a lot of work gets done at the committee level, and
Right.
and so, when they get to there's certainly there's a lot of work to get through as well, and so, they kind of move through things pretty quickly. So that's good. In the current environment, meeting remotely, having to stop and take a roll call vote for everything. I mean, it prolongs the whole meeting because usually you could just go all in,
Yes.
aye, like the ayes have it,
Right.
in favor, aye, and anybody, and just move on. But now you have to stop and call out each person, and then there are 1 or 2 people who can never either find their microphone or whatever, and they're like, so anyway. But
and I'll just say one thing because I want to do a special on him, Bill Cashin's Manchester, and I will when I get through my period of mourning. But I would follow all this stuff because Bill and I would be over there, and one of the things I was trained research, at university, then the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I'd go dig out all this information, and twice Ray Wazorek tried to oust him as the chairman of the board, and you go and find everything, and the second time they nearly did it again. But then he stepped down, and Dave Wibby took over.
Oh, right.
And
yeah.
here's the thing, Dave, you'd be on the phone, and Ray Wazorek and Bill Kishin, they were great friends. You know, had a wonderful relationship, and Dave Wibby was one of his closest friends. And I'd be there, and Dave would call up, and they would be talking to each other. And he told me we would go at it inside the chamber, but once we walked out, we were friends.
Right.
And he said he was appalled by how stuff had developed with all this. I call it this trumper.
Yeah, but it's only one or two, really.
Right.
I mean, I think most people.
Right.
I can
You're right.
tell you that in my relationships, you know, with the people on the board of aldermen and on the school board, you know, we don't. You know, I've been the subject of a couple of 13-1 votes, you know, and
I know, I was there for one of them.
yeah, and so you know, it's fine, and you just move on. I mean, I respect people's opinions, and you know, it's not that people have to be overly nice to each other or anything, but you know, it's you're representing policy and trying to do your best on each decision, and then you move on to the next thing.
But you don't. The thing he had to put up with the union leader,
Right.
and you weren't here for William Loeb,
No.
the
well, he
infamous
was- yeah.
publisher. But he said you could go in and have a drink with Bill Loeb, and you could call them up and say, "Well, you're a bit unfair on that one,"
Right.
and they'd actually be responsive. It's this the personal attacks.
Yeah,
they
it's
just,
unfortunate.
you know, that developed, I guess, after his time on the board.
Well, I can tell you on the Board of School Committee, has been a pleasure to be on. There's been very little, no divisiveness really. I mean, there's been a couple of times when things, you know, came to a head a little bit, but that's just because of the heat of the moment. But there's been never any sort of nastiness or anything.
No, the McCarthyism of the previous couple boards.
No, and the other thing is, you know, the late nights, you know, people showing up with, you know, reams of questions and sort, you know, trying to, like it was like the Inquisition some nights.
Hi, welcome to Ward 13. Who's this?
Yes, I'm calling the show, and I'd like to know if you know the results of Ward 6 aldermanic race last night.
Yes, we do. Hot off the press, or maybe lukewarm off the press now. So the result was the original result was 501 votes to Sebastian Sharonoff, who won the election, and 488 votes to Scott Britton.
14 votes.
There was so eventually that was revised to, I think, 503 versus 489, give or take one. So 14 votes between the two, and Sebastian Sharonoff was the winner.
So if all my 13 viewers had actually voted for...
If, buts, and maybes, right?
He still wouldn't have won.
No. Well, you know, it's a very tight race. So it was it was a well-run race, I think, and people presented their thoughts, and it was respectful, and there was no monkey business going on. And I was involved in that election, trying to help out. And I just, you know, anytime you see democracy at work, where people are being respectful of each other and all that, it's all good. And so it was good to see 1,000 people show up for a special election.
That's tremendous.
I was surprised, though. You know, you had like when Governor Sununu stepped in and endorsed Sebastian Sharonoff. It went, and you had Donna Soucy and the mayor.
Okay.
You know,
I'm still on the phone.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm still on the phone. I just wanted to say I met yesterday. I talked to this O'Connell man. My grandfather used to be an alderman for many years and a state senator. So.
Oh, right.
That's
Yes.
what I wanted to say.
Yes. Nice to meet you again. I enjoyed talking to you yesterday.
Well, thank you very much for calling. Take care.
All right. So, I met this lady yesterday. She grew up over on Bell Street, she told me. But anyway, so that was that election. So that's so we have, but there are other changes coming to the board. We have Ward 8.
Ben Dion is now
Ben Dion's on the school board side.
School board.
But just to sing with the alderman a minute, we have Ward 8 with Michael Porter, who has resigned, and so that seat will be. It's a little complicated. We don't have to deal with it here, but on the day of the primary in September, there'll be an election to elect somebody with immediate effect.
Right. They become the alderman.
They'll become the alderman starting in that day in September. They'll be the alderman through at the end of the year. At the same time, there will be a ballot there, and it may be the same piece of paper, or maybe two separate sheets of paper. Matt Normal wasn't clear yet, which he could do. But there will be also the normal election, a primary election to choose a final two candidates, presumably there's more than two, to run in November. So if you, if it's Mr. and Mrs. A that person could be running for the seat from September through the end of the year, and they'll also be running in the primary, so you'll be voting for them twice, actually, if you support them. So, anyway, so that's Ward 8, and then we have, and I'd like to give a shout out tonight to Barbara Shaw, who was unwell and who improving, I believe. But
she has COVID.
Yes,
she has COVID.
Yeah, I'd seen that, so I know that she was. So I wish her all the best, and I believe that she's doing better, is what I have heard. So. Because we've had a lot of changes on those boards already. But I mean, as it stands right now, if Barbara was indisposed for a couple of weeks, and hopefully that's all it would be, you would have the next school, like last night's Board of Aldermen meeting. You had Ward 6 not represented, Ward 8 not represented, and Ward 9 not represented. So,
well, they are represented because they have two aldermen at large, which is you can address that issue, which I plan to.
Well, we'll talk about the charter stuff, because that's going to come up under the charter too, I think.
Because we'll talk about the school charter soon, but under the city charter, I know I was talking to Mike Lopez, who was like the second alderman at large, because it was. The first was Danny, who's still Bennett, Danny O'Neill, and then Rich Gerard was elected, but then he ran for mayor the next term and got defeated. And then Mike Lopez, and then became chairman of the board. He is of the opinion that there should be 4 and they should be geographic in order to give other people a chance.
Yeah.
Because if you have to run citywide, you have to run so much with so much money, or you have to have such a reputation. I guess you had the reputation for the school board because you got elected at large.
I did, right. and I like being a representative at large. I mean, a school board member at large, because I just it kind of suits who I am. You know, I have friends in all corners of the city. I know people involved in PTOs or teachers or administrators in the school buildings from the west to the east and the north to the south. So I know a lot of them. I'd find it a little confining, I think, just being in one ward. But having said all of that,
Art Beaudry never let that constrain him.
No.
Well, we'll end that conversation.
But I personally think the boards are way too big and ought to be reduced in size. So if we're going to talk about the charter in a minute, the charter questions that have been tabled but will be pulled off the table now for a vote in 2 weeks' time.
Right.
We'll see what will actually get. But one of the things is to reduce the size of the boards.
I think that the boards are way too big.
Right. So let me just say that and the alderman at large position, I just don't understand it. So as much as I said that I like being one, but being an at large representative, I still think the boards are too large. I wouldn't have any are too big anyway. I wouldn't. I'd reduce them down. My proposal, which probably won't make it into the hopper at this point. Excuse me. Will not.
The Gary Hopper.
The Gary Hopper. Sorry. But what I have been pushing for is to have a board of 9, and that would be 3 floatarials with 3 people representing each one. So you'd have 3 people represent wards 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 people represent wards 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 3 people represent wards 9, 10, 11, and 12.
That's a good proposal. I'm surprised I didn't think. I'm surprised I didn't think of it.
I'll lay claim to that one myself.
I really am. That is good.
So we were looking at different ways, and of course that's with the mayor no longer on the board either, and so you'd have a board of 9. And this way, if you're in, let's just take pick a ward, like Ward 7 as an example. If you're in Ward 7, if somebody passed away or somebody was ill or somebody was, you have 3 people representing you. Or if one of them doesn't like you or you don't like them, or if they're not responsive, whatever it might be, there are 3 people representing Not
Not
just your
just you,
ward.
but they're representing that ward, that area.
Yes, 5,
Yeah.
6, 7, and 8. So so if you think in terms of the school side, for instance, that would generally be McLaughlin Memorial, Southside, Jewett, that
Yeah.
sort of down there, down into Highland Goffs Falls, etc. It doesn't follow quite perfectly with the schools, but we don't need it to. The wards 9, 10, 11, and 12 would represent everything on the west side and some more.
Right.
And down, Ward 9 actually, I think, is Highland Goffs Falls. But in any case, I thought that was a good idea to reduce the size of the board.
And it's more rational. And the alderman with school board at large members, there has been more school
There's been
members at
turnover.
large. But we can say there was Danny O'Neill, Rich Gerard, Mike Lopez, and Joe Lavasser.
Right.
I mean, that's all. It's since
Yeah.
1989. I think 1999. The first.
And it is. There's no
election.
like if you're running for I ran for office for the first time a year and a half ago, and running city.
Pardon me.
Sometimes I think of Manchester as a small city, and I think in lots of ways it is. But when you're walking around knocking on doors. There's an awful lot of doors to knock, and so much new development. I was down in Ward 6 the last few weeks, knocking on doors down there, and I came across some really. First of all, there's some really nice neighbourhoods in Ward 6. From everything from sort of old Manchester to newer Manchester to very new Manchester. But so it's a lot of work, and I think it's prohibitive to some people running citywide.
One of the reasons I say that you won, because you weren't a shoo-in. You didn't have the money advantage. There were other
Right.
people in that race that had more. Was because you had a great connections with teachers, and not just teachers, but with parents.
Yeah.
We used to call them the PTAs. What are they? PTOs now?
PTAs.
PTA.
Yeah, I do, because I don't shy away from the fact that I know a lot of teachers, but I don't think that's what got elected me. I think one of my criticisms of teachers generally is that they're not politically active.
Yes.
Contrary to all the stuff you see on social media, people accuse the teachers, the MEA, the teachers union, this, that, and the other thing. I can tell you from where I sit as a school board member, most of the time I sit there and I wonder, how come there's nobody here? Like, where's the voice of the teacher?
Yeah, Bill Cashin always said, because he was telling me, he says, John, don't wait for the teachers. The only thing they're going to arrive for is for their contract.
Yeah,
And then he tells me that in like 2014.
Yeah.
And then you watch it over the years, and sure enough, where are they?
Right.
And we've talked about that before.
Right. Oh, there was an election in the MEA a couple of weeks ago, electing a new vice chair because Maxine Mosley, who's been there a long time, is retiring.
Oh, she
and so she'll
has.
be gone. Well, as of June.
Yeah.
And so there was an election. I've forgotten who actually won again, but I just heard. But I don't know the exact numbers, but.
But you had good connections with people because you'd been active. You were active in soccer,
right?
Yeah,
I think that's
and
where
you
it
knew
is.
people.
If I was to pick, I'd say you sort of do your dues in one sense, right? Like I think about Kevin Kavanagh, right, running in North End Ward 1, and I remember Kevin 20 years ago, on the baseball field and being there late at night and brushing the mound and doing all the work, and I could name I'm not going to name all those names of all those people that I was with on Manchester North Little League or at the soccer league, and then of course you get to know in the intercity stuff, so you know the people in all the other leagues, so that's like a whole community there.
People that get involved with their community generally vote. It's like Mike Lopez got elected alderman at large. He hadn't been an alderman, but he knew everybody.
Right.
He was a mailman.
Yeah.
Then he was the head of that union, and then he was Mr. Veteran. He knew everything.
Yeah, Mr. Sweeney
listed
Post.
people.
Right.
So you knew people. And like when I was with Bill Barry, you go up with Bill Barry. Hey, Billy. Everybody knows Bill Barry. Everybody.
Well, it's like going shopping years ago, and I used to say my wife, who knows everybody,
a wife is
she
that knows people.
We used to joke about, she was like the mayor. He goes to the supermarket because we'd get about as far as the bananas, and that's as far as we could get to because, the chatting would start there, and I'd take the kids and we'd cover the rest of the aisles, and eventually we'd get back. But anyway, it's part of community. I guess being active in the community. If somebody wanted to know what's the secret sauce to getting elected, I don't know if I know the big answer, but I know the simple answer for me, for Pete, would be, go out and earn it. You know,
Yeah.
like it's earned on Monday nights in a snowstorm in February when there's nothing going on, and there's a community meeting going on because there's a problem in the neighborhood, or
Right.
there's a civic something going on, and you go out and go to that, or there's a cultural event and you go out and go to that, or you go downtown and you go and you sit and you eat in a Manchester restaurant instead of going to some national chain somewhere out in the suburbs outside of Manchester. That's where it's, you walk into the bar, you walk into the restaurant, you walk down the main street, you talk to people. It's kind of simple, really. It's all politics is local, right?
It is.
To quote a very famous man. So, anyway, so with regard to the reducing of the school boards, when Manchester Proud did its work, and as it continues to do, it went, and one of the values of Manchester Proud's work is that it's data based.
Right.
And so
all the focus groups
Right.
and the gathering of
you can
the
go,
actual data.
stuff that we never had before, really. Anybody
Yeah.
could say anything. I heard this, or I thought this, or you can go to places where here's the actual numbers, or what is the average size of a school board in the United States? What's the average size of a school board in cities greater than 100,000? Like you can look up these kinds of numbers, and therefore, so anyway, their data-driven approach, they came back and between 5 and 7, or actual the numbers 5 and 7, were the two most common sizes of school boards in the United
Yeah.
States, and even I think Boston has 7. The city of Boston, a little bit bigger than Manchester.
Because it can't, you lose the efficiency, and you might be doing it in the name of democracy in a
Right.
way, but we can see how democracy can sometimes go awry when somebody keeps
You
getting
only have-
reelected.
Well, I can
Boom,
tell you, you
boom,
want to see
boom, boom.
democracy go awry, in my opinion, and it might upset some people, but you only have to go to Concord to look at a 400-person
Yeah.
house.
It should be 150.
I can tell you this:
Paid.
a 400-person house is not 4 times better than a 100-person house.
Oh, yeah.
It may be the actual opposite.
Yes.
So anyway, so that's one of the charter things.
Here's the thing. Because the school charter amendments would take the mayor out of the school board. Now, Bill Cashin always told me there's no reason the mayor should be on the school board.
Right.
And he also said the alderman can't deal with school district issues. It's too time consuming.
Right.
It's just, and they always just put it off, but the mayor somehow got stuck
Right.
in there. And when he was the vice president, former vice president, Joe Biden came to see Bill Cashin, and Joyce was there, and I can't share that because it's private, but I can share little things. I can still see Joe Biden's reaction when Bill tells him that Joyce is the head of the school board, as mayor, because Biden started his career in the city council in Delaware, and he said it was the worst. He said being a senator, fighting Jesse Helms, everybody, was easier
Right.
than dealing with being on the municipal council. He said the zoning board was the worst. If I never see another
Yeah.
zoning
Yeah.
board meeting, but he was just surprised that the mayor, would be on it.
And many, as you know,
Yeah.
many of our mayors didn't. Because the
That's
mayors
what Bill
don't have
said.
to go.
Bill
So-
said he could never understand why Ted Gatzis, and they
Yeah.
once were allies, but then they
Right,
fell
right.
out. That Ted went in there
Yeah.
and tried to manage that. He said a mayor shouldn't.
Right.
It's the vice chair who does it, and no other mayor really ever had tried to do that, except even Bob Baines. Bob Baines had some influence because
Yeah.
he was a career
former
educator,
principal, yeah.
but he was never like how Ted tried to do it.
Right. Well, some people are, there's this sort of false narrative around, like I can go in and I can sort out the school board, and
Right.
there's some obvious problem that I'm going to find there.
He could get you that the remote learning stuff back in 2014 or
Yeah,
15.
believe me.
That wound up in New York
yeah.
Times.
Let's not even go there. But So one of the things about I saw that that Elizabeth Moreau, the former Ward 6 representative who was just replaced last night, and she announced, I saw an ink link that she announced that she's running for Alderman at large, and that's going to be an interesting race, because as it stands right now, that I know of, that's going to be Joe Levasseur and and Miss Moreau, and then
There's
you have
another woman who's who I've never
so
heard
June
of.
Trusciani is running on the Democratic side, and so that's Dan O'Neill and her, and then I've heard
Katie DeRoche going to run again?
I haven't heard that.
'Cause she did a really great job.
But she did, and she came very close.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then I've heard of a couple of others, but I don't want to share them right now, just because I don't want to be the origin of the story when it hasn't come out from other places. So, or the originator of the story. So I think the aldermanic side at large will be interesting. But just to go back to Miss Moreau just for a minute, I just wanted to, I noticed that, and I read on Inklink today that she's not alone in this. There are others who think that the school district ought to be a school department, and I hear that. It's not that it's completely outlandish and that it's crazy, but if it ever became a department, then people should be prepared for the fact that their aldermen are going to become school board members rather than the other way around.
Right.
The elephant will eat the mouse.
And as Bill Cashin, who, 32 years, he's got that big portrait. I never met a man that knew practical politics as well as he did. And I studied at university, I've covered it for years as a journalist. As I said, aldermen cannot handle the school board.
Well, if you
it's
think about
too big. It's too big. It's too big for them to handle.
So in terms
they
of
have to handle the day-to-day of everything else.
In terms of actual people, right? So employees, for instance, the school district is between 4 and 8 times. It's way more than 4. It's closer to 8 times the size of the police department.
Yeah.
It is 6 to 10 times bigger than the fire department. It is
the budget's almost $200 million, isn't it?
So the total budget, budget depends on who you ask, right? So, because with the additional monies that come from federal money and all the rest of it, so $183 million was the best number you could use for last year.
Okay.
It's likely to be, hopefully, it's the same number this year because of all the different things that are going on. But besides just the money thing, right? In terms of buildings, if you put all the municipal buildings together, you don't get to the number of buildings you get at the school. That's right. So I have great respect for the aldermen and the work that they do and the things that they have to be involved in, and many of them are very capable. I would just say this, that if the school board became a department, your aldermanic meetings aren't going to look like they looked like before. That stuff has to be dealt with. Now, as a citizen, you can give up you can give up having your voice heard at all at the table and let the bureaucrats run it all.
Right.
And you can have the administrations run it. And if that's what you want, make them a department, have the district administration do whatever it wants and run it whatever way it wants and have no public oversight. Well, you either end up in that scenario, or the one that's more likely, I think, is someone like me. If that were the case, then I'll switch and run for alderman. So, so then I'd be an alderman on the aldermanic board.
An alderman would have to be
with responsibility.
Would have to be a full-time position, and they'd have to be paid $50,000, $60,000, something $1,000. I've heard, because it would be too intricate to do. And the other thing is, you mentioned, Manchester Proud doing its research. I've done my research too. Most school districts are independent.
Of larger size.
That's been a trend for 100 years, to get them away from the control of the alderman as a way to, certain it used to be the aldermen used to be more corrupt than they are today.
Right.
We want to think they're as corrupt as the days of like Boss Tweed, but they really aren't. But to get rid of the political interference of aldermen, that was part of the progressive agenda of over 100 years ago, and it works. And increasingly, when a political entity like New York or something would try to take control again, within a generation they knew the folly of it and had to make it back independent, but with the oversight of an elected school board.
Right. So conversely, if you end up, which I support, if you end up with an independent school board having its own authority, and that's something that will be on the ballot, I presume, I'm expecting in November. Then if you end up with that, then what you're going to have is people will be people vying to be on the school board to affect that. And school boards have become sadly very political and contentious in other parts of the United States.
That started in California, where the John Birch Society is to infiltrate them.
Right. So we
With this is you're teaching socialism and communism,
Right.
because you're saying that Dwight D. Eisenhower was a great man.
Right, right.
We all know he was a communist.
Right. Well,
That's actually true.
yeah, it's amazing in the light of growing.
Mitt Romney's a communist now to certain people.
Yeah.
Mitt Romney
Imagine
of all
that.
people.
Yeah.
that exemplar of
yeah.
capitalism.
Yes. So it's crazy. It's crazy stuff. But anyway, I'm expecting that we will see the charter. One of the charter. I'm hoping, and I expect that the aldermen, when they take the questions off the table, that the questions are modified. They come off the table at the next meeting, and that there will be a proposal the primary proposal will be to make the school board a separate authority with full authority to manage the budget and everything else.
Right. The whole point of the charter amendments was to stop the duplication of the budgeting, because then you'd set a budget and then the aldermen would get involved because of lack of oversight of our old charter. But people like Joe Lavasser attacked question 1, saying that it's going to wreck the tax cap because it's going to give the school board the ability to override the tax cap. But I've got the language of Amendment 2, proposed Amendment 2, says the sole authority of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen over school district fiscal matters shall be to approve or deny a request by a school board to override the charter's annual limit on budget increases. So the Board of Mayor and Aldermen retains the thing about the tax cap.
We must make a difference here. What you're reading is the product of the last Charter Commission.
Right.
The last Charter Commission is defunct, null, void, over, in Monty Python sense.
Yeah, but the amendments
gone.
they made.
They too are sitting there to be done with whatever you want. Those amendments. So I do not support the presentation of those amendments as written. And
why? Well, I'm not going to.
Because with all due respect to the people on the previous Charter Commission, they did their work and they came to a conclusion. I think it's like to me it's like the wisdom of Solomon. In the end, making this change that they propose while the Board of Mayor and Aldermen retains veto power, it's a change without a change. It's a change in name only. So if you're going to do it, let's do it. And ultimately, the people will decide, right? I want to put this before the people. So we'll put before the people the amendment that says the school board will be it will have full autonomy with all the associated elements to it. And that will go before the people in November. Not the product, it'll be the modified product.
Because in your interpretation, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen has the ability. They don't have to put them on the ballot, but they have the ability also to make their own proposals or amend these proposals.
Well,
right.
Under the amendment as proposed by the charter, we're getting into weeds. Under that amendment,
I'm trying to figure it out.
Well, under that amendment, they had nothing to do with anything, except, just like today, the Board of School Committee puts a budget together. And the budget, or the superintendent does, it's then approved adopted by the school board, and it goes before the board, mayor, and alderman for their final decision, and they get to make the final decision. And so what they get to do is this: they get to decide, no, we're not going to. You're not getting that other $3 million that you think you need, because we're not going to give it to you. So, as an example, something happened in recent months in Manchester's political life. There was a vote taken by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to eliminate yard waste pickup for some days. Right. They were reduced by 2 or 3 weeks. And in good faith, this vote was taken. There are aldermen who feel, and they're perfectly entitled to this, that we need to find reductions and you have to make savings someplace. And they decided here's a place to make a savings.
That's true.
Now, and I just wish they lived up to it afterwards, and many of them did. That, hey, we made a mistake. We thought you, the people, didn't want your leaves picked up 3 or 4 times a year. So guess what happened? We had people I saw on the Ward 6 page, Ward 8 page, and people said, what the heck is this? What are we paying for? Like, why are we, why? And you know what happened? The Board of Mayor and Aldermen said, we're putting that 80 or 120 million, 120,000 back into the budget because the people decided. I'll use one other example.
That's what people complain about.
A famous
by the way.
example. A famous example is down in Derry about 8 or 9 years ago when they decided in Derry they were eliminating East Derry Fire Station. Now Derry's a conservative, Republican-leaning town, and the decision was made to eliminate East Derry Fire Station. And so most fiscal conservatives, so-called, thought we're doing the right thing. We're doing the people's bidding. They elected, that person was elected in there on a I won't increase your taxes ticket, and I'll be fiscally responsible. All that conversation. So they decided to eliminate East Derry Fire Station. Well, guess what happened? The people of Derry said, hang on a minute, yeah, I want you to keep my taxes low and not the way, but I don't want my fire station going away. So how much extra do you need to keep the fire station? And they told them whatever it was, another, $500,000 a year or something.
We can get rid of French algebra.
No, absolutely not. What's important here is they said, here's my checkbook. How much more do you need? And the people of Derry, Republican fiscal conservative said, I want my fire station.
Do they have the town meeting time of government?
Yes.
Do. I've seen those. People
there
go
you
in.
go. So the same thing happened in Manchester with regard to the yard pickup, in my view. People said no, and in this case we found that our contingency funds, but in the end we spent it, right?
Yeah.
But the same thing would have happened, I think, if the alderman had said, well, we could bring back the leaf pickup, but it's going to cost you, $2 per month extra in taxes. It's going to be $24 a year each house. And people would have said, I'll take it. Give me the $24. Now, let me go back to the schools. The problem with the schools is that the pain that is felt in the schools by parents and children, who, if the school board members are doing their job right, they're aware of where the pain, how bad it actually is. That never gets to the alderman. The aldermen have the luxury of taking $3.5 million last year of the money that we were given by the state for our children, and the aldermen took it and kept it on their side, and they suffer no penalty for it.
I missed that one.
Well, they would term it a different way. They would say we wouldn't override the tax cap to allow us to spend it. So,
right.
The bottom line is, when we wrote a letter to the governor at the beginning of this year, in the face of COVID and everything else, and said, we need some help here in Manchester. And the governor wrote us back a snarky letter saying, the money I sent you last year, you wouldn't even take. No, he didn't say you wouldn't take. He said you took it and you used it on the municipal side. So why would I give more money to schools? Now, my problem.
So that was the Board of Aldermen cannibalizing funds that should have gone for schools, and was sent by the state for schools.
Right, which drives me nuts, because I would like to hold to the fire, people's feet to the fire, who are part of this. Like, they can't have it both ways. So if you happen to be, a strong supporter of Governor Sununu's, and if you happen to be somebody who has of that whole same belief, then how can you have it both ways? I get tired of being told by Governor Sununu, representing fiscal conservatism, etc., that, I'm not going to give you the money because you went and took it and spent it on the schools and on the city side, and then my fiscally conservative friends put on their fiscal conservative hats here in Manchester and tell me, we're taking the money and we're spending it on schools. I'd like them to talk to Governor Sununu and leave us, the school board, out of the triangle and get their act together about how this works.
Good luck with Sununu. If anybody who's a veteran and the veterans' deaths and deaths unreported in our nursing homes, he's just, my opinion of him is very low.
Anyway, so I don't want to. So long as
I didn't realize that you guys had got shafted that way.
From
thinking of a word that's strong but not vulgar.
The analogy with the yard waste is great, because what happens to an alderman's position in Manchester is when we have to eliminate classes, when we have to eliminate programs, when we have, when we once had 42 kids in a classroom, when we have the least well-funded school system in the state, the highest pupil-teacher ratios in the state, that pain never makes it to the alderman's desk. the aldermen can disassociate themselves, and then they have the gall to point fingers at the school. What are those guys doing over there? I remember being told once by a couple of aldermen, and they said to me very forcefully, it was 10 years ago, do you think that if we gave them another 20 million, them, that's whoever they are, right, being the school board, do you think if we gave them another $20 million a year, that would fix the problem? And I said, I know what I said to them? I said, I'll tell you what. And these were two leading aldermen in the city. And I said to them, I'll tell you what, I don't know the answer to that question, and neither do you. But we all know the answer to this question, which is giving them $20 million less than what they need has not worked. That's what you've done for the last 10 years.
That created a disaster and undermined the...
So I think
the system.
Ultimately, I believe in democracy strongly. I think, if the people decide, and so you elect a school board, the people who elect the school board are exactly the same people who elect the alderman. The aldermen are not the school board are not the inferior stepchild, the children of a lesser god, right?
You're not the children's table, as Joe Lavassa would say.
Right. So I mean, you look at some of the dysfunction. I don't want to be disparaging of our aldermen, but our aldermen's record over, say, a 20-year timeline in terms of who they were, their capability, what they knew, what they didn't know, and how smart they were, how capable they were, or some of their moral decisions over time. There's an awful lot of people who have served on the Manchester Aldermanic Board who aren't the most stellar of characters.
Jim, you're getting into Ward 13 territory.
Well, I'm just saying the idea that somehow that the aldermen are superior, in terms of morality, intellectual capability, business experience, or anything else, doesn't bear witness. The people vote 29 representatives in the city of Manchester to represent them, 14 on the school board, 14 on the board, mayor and alderman, and a mayor. And the same people vote for all 28. I think in the end, if the school board was not doing what the people wanted, what would happen would be that people would be elected to remove them from office, and the people would get what they actually want.
You're actually, now that your proposal for limiting, cutting 6 positions from the board, each board makes more sense because it increases the accountability of everybody.
Right.
You can't diffuse it over,
And ultimately, I would hope that the quality of people running for public office would be raised as a result. I think that there'd be fewer places, and so it's just like the 400 thing doesn't work in Concord because everybody they give out seats in the House at UNH at frat parties because it's a joke. So and I hate to be so disparaging of a public body like that. I know there are many fine people working there, but. No, in the end, it's like this is like market forces or democracy or water flowing downhill. If there was a school board elected that ended up being profligate with the people's money and wasteful, and then that wouldn't last too long. They'd be run out of town, and new people would be elected.
The big shock I had coming back to Manchester, and then starting to follow politics, would be about 2013. Was coming from a place like, my father lived in Naperville, Illinois, which was a suburb west of Chicago that had the 6th best school system in the United States. And we're not talking about one of these polls on the internet. This was over 20 years ago. And he said, John, you should buy the house because it's got the 6th best school system. Do you really, this house is going to be worth, because his wife, my stepmother, was executive of General Motors. It was like being in the Army, every 3 or 4 years. Now you're going to a new territory. Right. They were like a military in that way. So it was a beautiful house. He lived 3 doors down from the head of the VA of Chicago, which helped him immeasurably. But I'll never forget his thing. He was a very practical person, salesman. So you've got this great school system. Also had the #1 library too, which those are things that sell to people.
Well, we need to figure. Sorry, John.
To come here and find out that the school system. I couldn't believe the poverty of it and the cutting of the programs.
Right.
Because this was never a rich city, and I went through in the 60s, 70s. But we had, I say Latin. You could say German, Russian.
Right. We still have Latin and
music.
German,
Yeah.
but here's the thing: so major changes are going on within our schools. We've seen, I hate to be so. I don't mean
Schools have changed. That's true.
well, and they're changing. Like the current board was just named as the New Hampshire School Board of the Year. Now, I know it's a little bit conceited for me to be mentioning that as a member of that board, but I've got a very small piece of that. I mean, that's the board. That's the board's work, and. And actually, I think importantly, it reflects some of the Manchester Proud work also. But the reason for that is because there is a catalogue of things that have been done by this board. So the board, like we eliminated one school, sadly, Hallsville School has been
Right.
eliminated. On the 19th of May, much more delayed than I was hoping for, but on the 19th of May, the plan for the future of Manchester schools will drop. And whether we will be closing 15 schools, opening 92, or moving them all 4 feet to the left, we don't know. Everybody out there, ladies and gentlemen, if you're hearing rumours about the closure of West or the closure of Central or the demolition of one of our middle schools or the other things that you're hearing, none of it has any validity right now. But on the night of the 19th of May at 6 o'clock, or shortly thereafter, you will hear what the proposal for the future of Manchester schools is in terms of buildings.
That's 2 weeks.
2 weeks from now.
From Wednesday. On a Wednesday.
And here's where we're going to, and it's all in the table from the possibility of building 1 or 2 brand new high schools. Spending 400 million or so on that, on such a thing, all the way through to changing eliminating schools, repurposing schools. There's the possibility we take our current schools and we spend money on redoing those. Clearly, we've been kicking this thing down the road for years, and action needs to be taken. So we need to right-size the district in terms of personnel, in terms of facilities. So that process is going on. We've streamlined the curriculum piece. We've introduced there's a full curriculum for math and English now that flows from kindergarten all the way through
that's
to
been
12th grade.
rationalized finally.
That's all been done. This current year, when you go to high school in Manchester, it's starting right now, but effective in September. All the course catalogue is all online. It's all done digitally. It's available in multiple languages, and it's universal. So whether you're at West, MST, Memorial, or Central High School, you have the choice of the same subjects, and you have the ability to take them out of your school and take them remotely as well as all of this is all new. And now, if you look at the new dashboard that will be delivered in a couple of weeks' time, the dashboard that's been worked on for a year and a half, which will give you. So we're trying to be a data-driven school district, so that all the differences evidence-based. So
right.
all the stuff
is
the disagreements that I might have with my friends in the aldermanic board or within the school board, or when parents are chatting at the kitchen table about what's the graduation rate out of this school, what's the literacy rates out of that school, what number of pupils are there here, how much money are we spending on this. All of that data will be available on the dashboard to everybody at the same time, and it's no one's got their finger on the scales. We're taking the data and we're putting the data out in front of people. The whole reason is to stop having these stupid conversations. I constantly see them on social media where people are saying things that just aren't true.
Oh,
both good and bad, right?
You don't believe that we should go back to the paradigm of 1930? Like
no,
my father.
That's all, yeah. That's all.
My father there was a bob. He'd have to go thread a bobbin before he went to high school.
All those conversations, with all due respects, those people who were talking about, we got to go back to the 3 R's.
But I remember that one, the 1930s.
Yeah, let's go back to the curriculum of the 1930s.
Right, we're living in Manchester of the Dickensian age.
Yeah, and not far from that comment. Not far from that comment is why don't we take the girls and have them all doing sewing and taking dictation and give them all a typewriter if we could find one, and they can all sit in there and do home economics, and the boys and we'll have the boys doing woodwork, and
they'd start getting rid of that.
Yeah, and let's bring the skirts back for the girls because wearing those pants, it's all too modern, and then we'll have the brown, the black, the yellow, the green, the blue, and the other colours separated out the back of the class, and they'll be in larger classes in different schools. Why don't we go right back? If we're going to go back to the 1930s, let's go back to the full 1930s, not this romantic version that people have of what it is. So I have to say, I joined the Manchester School Board with one primary objective, and that was to drive excellence into the system, to increase accountability, and my strong faith, and it sounds like electioneering, but I have great faith in the future of Manchester, and I see no reason why Manchester can't have the best schools in the state of New Hampshire. That's where we should be aiming, and that's where we ought to, and we ought to do it. And it bugs me no end to hear talk about schools that are based in strip malls and tiny schools in villages in other parts of New Hampshire, and they're lauded for some particular achievement, etc.
Talking about charter schools.
And well, that too, not just charter schools, but so we the amount of work done in Manchester schools every day, the amount of benefit that's brought to children who are impacted by all kinds of domestic violence and have had interrupted educations and all that stuff, and then the amount of work that's done. We're turning out kids every year into Harvard and MIT and into all the greatest schools. We do that. Sadly, we don't do it enough. And what I worried most of what caused me to run was because we were losing the plot. You can't be paying teachers less than they can earn in other towns and do that year over year and expect to retain the best teachers. We, for years, had great teachers in the city of Manchester. I've told the story many times, but there's one example I would give you from this September where a teacher, a middle school, 6th grade middle school teacher, left one of our middle schools with tears in her eyes because she did not want to leave. And she moved to a town 12 miles away in New Hampshire, and she got a $20,000 or $22,000 per year pay increase. That's $450 a week extra to drive 10 miles a day, 10 miles each way, to teach exactly the same subject to exactly the same kids, only fewer of them, in a building that's more modern. And my friends who are market-driven fiscal conservatives can't have it both ways. If you believe in capitalism, if you believe in market forces, and that's what determines outcomes, then clearly, if you're paying your staff $22,000 a year less than the guy who you compete with 10 miles away, guess what? Your staff's going to end up sucking in the end, and he's going to have all the best people. And there's no getting away from that. So their argument would be, we can do nothing about it. We're just stuck here, and that doesn't make any sense either.
But it's not true. It's a lie.
The hottest real estate market in the United States.
Yes,
right?
I know.
Property prices in Manchester have gone up. Houses in Manchester have gone up between 11 and 18% in the last 12 months. If you own at 250,000 or so is the average house price, or was in Manchester. Well, at 10% increase, that's you made 25,000 out of your property additional value in the last year. At 15%, you made 37,500, and you probably made, and that's for the $250,000 house. So every homeowner in Manchester made at least $37,500 or around $37,500 each in net value in Manchester in the last 12 months. And yet, if we said to any one of those homeowners that we need $10 a month extra, $120 a year extra in taxes to pay for whatever it is, it's like the world is ending and we can't have it. The only reason we can't have it is because we've decided we don't want it.
There's a lot of truth to that.
So,
but I just don't see how a community can continue to thrive without a robust school system.
It can.
And it just doesn't come from, clicking your heels together and pretending it's...
The other thing that was very interesting, the Commission on School Funding, Education Funding, that spent a year looking at this, and we spent, a lot of money, state money, with that commission. They did a lot of... if you go to the Carsey Schools website, all the data's there. But they came back with an important conclusion, which is we in the state of New Hampshire, we spend $3.5 billion a year on education. The problem is that 2-point-some billion of that comes from local property taxes. 2.5, 2.8, 2 point whatever it is. So the vast majority of it, the vast majority of it, comes from local property taxes. In any other state, it comes from tax. The state has a we've the least well-funded school system in the United States when it in terms of state
That's
state
absolutely
spending.
true.
So when it comes back to state spending, so what happens? This is where the disparities come into. So someone goes to school in Newcastle outside Portsmouth, and they're in 5th grade, and the school system's spending $35,000 a kid. And they're in Manchester. You go to a school in Manchester, you're in grade school. This year in grade schools in Manchester, we're spending $12,100 per kid. Now, God bless the people in Newcastle. That's a rich town, but it goes for so many other towns too.
Yeah.
But the point is, they don't have the kids with the difficulties that we have. They don't have the poverty levels we have.
Or the diversity, issues that you have to
right.
When
Not
people come from different countries
so
and need
not only do we have
education.
28 kids in the classroom where they have 15, but the 28 kids that we have in our classroom have much greater needs than the 15 they have. And
That's true.
I don't really want to take anything away from that 15 at all. But they've flown down to the Cayman Islands with Dad. They know what it's like to get on a plane. They understand where the Caribbean is because they've twinkled their toes in the sand.
We only have couple more minutes, but the state government, the way it is here, is irresponsible. I've never seen a more irresponsible state government. I've never seen a worse one.
If you see
I've lived in plenty of states.
Look at some of the garbage that's in HB1 and HB2 that had the public representation yesterday, and you look at some of the stuff that's being included in that budget, and it has no business there. This so-called voucher bill or freedom accounts bill, handing out $7 million to a private person to manage that $70 million makes no sense. I mean, for instance, so you're going to have, just very briefly,
about 2 minutes.
Very briefly, we're going to have vouchers. It's going to cost the state $69 million. Call it $70 million. If 3% of people uptake it. So, but 10% of that's going to go to management to manage that process. That management is being done by an entity in Manchester. It's a lady who runs this organization in Manchester. If I wanted to manage that $70 million and I was in the state, I'd say give it to the Manchester School District to do it as a separate piece of business. I'd bid on it. I'd say, you know what, Governor or Mr. Edelblut, if you're going to spend $7 million to give somebody who's working out of their house to manage the state taxpayers' money, I'll have Karen DeFrancis hire 2 people for $50,000 each. We'll manage it for you. We'll take it for $4 million. You can put $3 million in the bank.
That's the boodle, man. We could talk about going back to Boss Tweed, the boodle.
Well,
and what, Jim? You got about another minute. What's the issues like on your show this week? What are you going to be talking about?
So I am going to talk about the charter, the charter change that we'll be looking for coming up at the next meeting. I'll be talking about the facilities, the plan that's about to come out. And those are the 2 primary things that I'll be talking, and the changes that we're seeing on the boards, what's going to happen in the next few months. So, that'll be the content tomorrow night.
Well, thank you very much for being here, and good luck.
Thank you, John. Thank you, folks, for listening.
We'll see you next week here on Ward 13. Mike Lopez is going to be here, and we're going to be talking about the charter.
All right.
Yeah. Take care.
Yes.